The increase in rent is going to be a large majority of choice for a lot of landlords. So that will be interesting to see how other tenants react. And what will be useful to see is whether this then becomes the norm across the industry. Hi guys, it's Arsh, and in today's video we're going to be talking about my predictions for the property market over the next 12 months. Before we do that, I need a small favour from you. If you wouldn't mind hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell, every time I release a new video you get notified of it. Now, this show is actually sponsored by the Property Investor app, and for those that don't know, it's the UK's first property investment platform which showcases below market value deals, rent-to-rent deals, lease option deals, service accommodation deals. So to get involved, all you do is you can either go to our website, which is propertyinvestораpp.co.uk, or if you've got a smartphone, go to the App Store, type in Property Investor and download it from the App Store. So let's get straight into it. We've had a rough 24 months with the likes of, without stating the obvious, COVID. Then we've gone into all the worldwide pandemics and with the war that's going on. And it's starting to take a toll, well, I say on the world, but more importantly, the property market. And all the things that happened within the pandemic, all the grants and everything that were given out. And I would say that the property market was given an easy ride compared to a lot of industries. And when we talk about that, they allowed the property industry to keep trading, whereas like restaurants, nightclubs, etc., they all had to close. So we were able, we had the ability to keep going. And now it feels like that's going to come back and bite us in the backside, because all that time, all that money that they've been pumping out into the economy, it appears that now is the time that they're going to start to reclaim some of it. So obviously with bounce back loans, they start to reclaim that. There's a lot of money that they're going to not be able to claim. So ultimately, regardless of how you look at it, I treat this as almost like a scale. So if they're losing it here, they've got to recover it here, and they've got to try and balance it, because ultimately the economy is a spreadsheet and the books need to balance. So let's have a look at the property industry. So first of all, we're going to look at interest rates. We've seen an interest rate rise, which ultimately is going to put a squeeze on some landlords. So although it's not a massive rise, there is an increase, and everything that I say in this video today is all about increased costs, which ultimately is a increase in operating costs, which then reduces the bottom line, which is the cash flow. So interest rate rise, that's gone up. So that's an increase in cost in mortgage costs. We've then got an increase in utilities. So everyone would have known about this. You would have heard about this on the news. From the start of April 2022, there's been an increase in gas, electricity and utility costs, and that's not the only one that's going to come for 2022. There's a rumour, or not a rumour, but it's said that in October 2022 there's going to be an additional hike, and again that's going to be an increase in cost. So what do us as landlords and property investors have to do about this? Because we're now paying more on our mortgage, which means that there's a hit on our cash flow. We're now paying more on our bills, which means that it hits on the cash flow. Now, we can't keep absorbing more costs and then reducing our profit margin, thinking, well, it's been okay. We can still run like this. Because reality is that if it keeps increasing, we'll start running at a loss. I know lots of HMO owners, I know lots of service accommodation providers that are very worried about the increase in utility costs, because if they've gone up by approximately 54%, that's a massive increase, and also a massive reduction in their profit margin or their cash flow level. So I know that I've been looking on some of the forums, I've been asking questions, what are the landlords going to be doing to combat this? Now, the first thing that everyone has said is that if there's an increase in costs, that means that there has to be an increase in rent. Now, this kind of bothered me a little bit, and the reason why I say it bothered me is because it's always going to be the end user that ends up paying for this. So regardless of what happens, it's the end user that will end up paying for it. So I know that there's some landlords that say that they're going to increase the rent. And when I questioned what kind of figure they're going to be looking to increase it, when they did some calculations according to how much extra is the utilities going to cost per month and per annum, they've calculated that they're going to increase the rent by 20 to 30 pounds per month per tenant. Now, if you work on that, if someone was living in a HMO and their rent is, let's say, £400 a month, now based on that, on a £20 increase, that's 5% increase on their rent. Now, if these guys, I'm not sure if the government's incentive was to try and increase costs so that some landlords will sell, and then as a result, there's going to be more properties back into the market for home buyers. But ultimately, if generation rent is not saving anything because their costs are increasing, what's going to happen here? And if you think about it from a logical point of view, is that let's just imagine that a worker's bringing in £1,000 a month. And these are all very random and just round figures. The rent is £400 a month, or now to be increased to £420. Then they've got the running costs and the living costs. There's not going to be a great deal left for them to save. And how long is it going to take them to save for a deposit to move onto the property ladder? And as we go further on, as we've seen historically, prices are going to keep increasing. Are they going to be able to save a significant amount of deposit in line with the price increases as well? So that's definitely something to take in consideration. We've also seen an increase in inflation. And I don't want to get too economical on this channel. I'd rather leave that for other people. But when you look at everything, it's not going to bode well this year. I think everyone came into this year thinking, okay, we've just got out of it, let's consolidate. And when we're looking at consolidating, just making sure that we're stable. And now we're finding that we're almost like firefighting to ensure that our property portfolios are going to continue to make money. Now, I'm sure they will make money. Landlords will have to adapt. There are solutions that you can put in place to minimize the amount of outgoing. So I'm going to be looking at, I've done previous videos on my YouTube channel, so where I spoke about metro electric meters. So I'm going to try and meter each room. I'm going to also look to perhaps where that's not a solution, look at other thermostat solutions. So thermostat, I know other landlords are looking at implementing like a fair usage scheme so that they don't increase the rent, but they implement a fair usage scheme or fair usage clause into their tenancies, which means that the bills can't go over X, and anything over X will then be charged back to the tenant. I'm not sure how easy that is going to be to implement, but it's definitely a good solution where you're not almost like putting too much pressure on the tenants. I believe that the increase in rent is going to be a large majority of choice for a lot of landlords. So that'll be interesting to see how other tenants react. And what will be useful to see is whether this then becomes the norm across the industry. So if one landlord's put up his rent and then the tenant says, well, you know what, I'm not putting up with that, I'm going to move to another landlord. And if the another landlord does the same, and then this becomes almost like the industry norm, the tenant will have no choice but to either decide not to live in rented accommodation any further, or decide to say, okay, I appreciate they're taking an increase in cost, and as a result, we're now going to have to pay slightly more rent and go from there. So there's no right or wrong way to look at this, and it will all be down to you and your personal circumstances and how you deal with this, which will determine, what happens with your cash flow level. So there we have it. It's an interesting time. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months. It'll be interesting to see how the industry reacts to all these new additional costs. I think also talking about property prices haven't continued to rise as aggressively as they have done over the last 24 months. So we're perhaps at a point where we're plateauing out, which is a good thing. Again, if you're selling, obviously it's not a great thing, but if you're looking to buy, perhaps it's a good thing that it is plateauing out. When I'm speaking to a lot of agents across the country, that activity has slowed down for them. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because they've had a great couple of years, but it'll be interesting to see, is this the start of something, not of a downward spiral, because I don't think that will happen, but perhaps prices just reducing slightly, which will give more home buyers the opportunity to buy. So hopefully that's just give you a bit of an insight as to what I think is going to happen over the next 12 months. So guys, if you want more free advice like this, I release a podcast every Tuesday at 6 a.m. It's called The Property Rebel. You can find it on all podcast stores, so whether it be on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, go and check it out. Again, it's called The Property Rebel, and it's 15 minutes of just literally golden nuggets. If you want to connect with me on social media, you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, under the handle of Arsh. And as I mentioned at the start of this video is sponsored by the Property Investor app. It's the UK's first property investment platform, which showcases all kinds of deals all over the country, whether you're looking for below market value deals, rent to rent deals, lease option deals, service accommodation deals. We've got them all there. Two ways to get involved. You can either go to propertyinvestораpp.co.uk and go through our website, or if you've got a smartphone, go to the App Store, type in Property Investor and download it. It will take you 2 minutes to download and register, and you'll see over 200 properties in the palm of your hand as great opportunities. So hopefully you found the video of some use. Hopefully you've taken something away from it. If you've got a question, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll look to aim to answer them. On that note, guys, as always, I wish you all to be safe, well and happy, and I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.